While Persona has grown massively over the past decade, the same can't really be said about all of Atlus's other franchises. SMT and Soul Hackers have seen some growth, but nothing compares to the smashing success that Persona 5 was. In the past few years, it's clear Atlus is trying to build a name for themselves, and that's even more clear now with Etrian Odyssey getting its first 3 games remastered in anticipation of another title coming eventually.
Huh? Cake? What are you talking about?
Etrian Odyssey might not be a title that you've heard a lot about. I mean, it could be easily overlooked considering the fact we haven't seen a new game since the 3DS. It's a dungeon-crawling RPG that has you mapping out a labyrinth as you traverse in search of treasures and quests. A very simple concept with a lot less emphasis on story than a lot of other modern RPGs. The game focuses more on exploration and combat instead. I'm unsure if this changes later in the series, but I thought it'd be better for me to take a relatively spoiler-free ride, seeing as that I'm a new player. I thought to myself that if Persona Q is the watered-down version of these games, then I'm interested to see what a more focused version of that could provide.
Are you still half asleep or something?
I want to be clear about something because I'm sure it might cause some confusion with where this video is going. I played about 7 hours of Etrian Odyssey 1, and then I read that maybe Etrian Odyssey 3 would be a better experience overall, so I went to try that one. But my thoughts of these games are that they're actually decent if this is what you're looking for. I don't really have any major faults that I'd point to that make the game bad. Everything I'm about to talk about is wholly an example of a game that just doesn't wind up appealing to me. So it's my thoughts and feelings, it's not a critique as if I'm calling the game bad.
Ooh, did you learn something new? I'm pretty sure I understand humans less than ever.
As far as this game goes, the main focus is the adventure, or the odyssey, as you would say, that you're going on. You map out the dungeon as you go, marking chests, doors, walls, everything. You could even have the game do the walls and stuff for you. You dive deeper and deeper into the labyrinth as things continue to get more and more dangerous. It's honestly a pretty fun concept to have a single dungeon that you progress deeper into as the game goes on, instead of having multiple different dungeons. The winding roads that lead to nowhere remind me a lot of the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon series, which I'm pretty sure Etrian Odyssey got its own Mystery Dungeon spin-off as well. Anyways, as I played the games, one thing I can say for sure that was appealing was just being able to construct this kind of simple. It wasn't a daunting task and I didn't have to climb any towers or any of that kind of open world stuff. Instead, it's pretty contained. I will admit though, it's no wonder this game feels off without the dual screens that the DS had. I'm sure that mapping it out on the DS was a lot more seamless, similar to Persona Q, as opposed to having this kind of weird 3-screen interface thing that was going on the PC version I was playing. But then it also felt weird to switch to the full view where I didn't see the map anymore as well. But I digress. The game did achieve a portion of fun for me in mapping out the dungeon, so I can understand the appeal of it. But I think the other piece of the core gameplay loop is what wound up throwing me off.
I mean, we even ate at a freaking burger. It's like we never left.
For a while, I wasn't sure if I was doing something wrong, but it seemed like from online, the general consensus was that the gameplay loop for Etrian Odyssey is indeed going into the dungeon, making a little bit of headway in progress, and then hopping out to refresh whatever damage you've taken and allies that have fainted, as well as refreshing your items and hoping you came out making a profit. This is probably the thing that threw me off. I assumed that in Persona Q2, I was doing something wrong because I was getting rolled by enemies and had to leave the dungeon after barely making any headway. But my understanding now is that this might be kind of standard. At least that's based on what I've read, which isn't a lot, of course. I didn't want to spoil anything for myself, assuming that I might find the game enjoyable a little bit later in. But your trips are much more about making it out with a profit, and then slowly upgrading and making your way further in, than they are about progressing a lot each time you go in. I think there's kind of a learning curve that involves a level of patience that I'm not totally used to in video games. I'm used to going into a dungeon and making pretty good progress before I have to leave for any reason. It's a different feeling and a different aim that the game is going for. I was hoping there'd be a difficulty that maybe toned a few things back, like enemy damage, so that I could make a decent amount of progress before jumping out so I could enjoy the game a little bit more. But unfortunately, with the way I was playing at least, Basic felt like it was a little bit too much and I was taking too much damage, and then I went to Picnic, and It's laughably easy to the point where the game just turns into an auto battle. I tried to balance the two, taking Picnic into the dungeon where I needed to retread territory, but then switching to basic after that, and then I found out the game doesn't let you swap difficulties on the fly when you're in a dungeon. So that killed my strategy, obviously. In the end, frustration got the better of me, and I couldn't really stand making so little progress every time I entered the dungeon, only to watch a character or two die and then trudging my way out. I'm sure a huge portion of this game is about team composition too, which I didn't dabble in too much, but I found it generally difficult to when I was barely enjoying my time in combat anyways.
These palaces could net you loads of cash. You could do whatever you wanted to people's hearts.
Now the visuals of this remaster are pretty nice looking. I mean, they're what I'd expect from a remaster of this kind of game. But the game does very little to make the remaster seem like it's worth the price to the player, to the consumer, I guess you would say. Because when you think about it, Atlus has been pretty reasonable with their remaster pricing, at least from a consumer standpoint. With the Persona series, Royal being $60 is not really surprising considering how massive of a game that is. Portable being $20 isn't a surprise after seeing Golden also be $20 on PC. Okay, I originally said in this part that I didn't think the pricing for the SMT3 remaster was that bad, and then I looked it up and I found out that it was $50 and not $40 like I for some reason thought it was. I mean, on one hand, at least they did add voice acting, so that's a whole other thing, but I've read that there are a myriad of other problems and technical issues with the SMT3 remaster port that don't totally make it worth $50. I don't know, someone else would probably have to judge that for me, but I'm just gonna say maybe it's not totally worth that price, but that's up to you guys, because I still haven't played that game. But I just don't see how any of these games are worth the $40 asking price. Buying them together yields a better result, I guess, but it's still fairly expensive for a series with very little claim to its name. And that's kind of sad because I feel like there are people who definitely enjoy this, especially more than I would, and they probably just won't pick it up because the asking price is either $40 for one game or $80 for 3, and there's no better bargain out there as of right now. Unless of course you buy it from other sites, but you get the point, it's very expensive.
I've had enough of your high and mighty rationalization.
To be frank with you guys, I don't really have any major criticisms of the game itself. Everything here has more to do with me and my own preferences than the game, and I think distinguishing the difference between whether a game is actually bad or whether it just doesn't appeal to me or you is very important for reviews. In the end, I'm sure if you enjoy these kinds of dungeon crawling RPGs, you'll find something you'll like in Etrian Odyssey's HD collection. But if you're someone like me, who maybe just needs a little bit more visual stimulation or faster progression, then it might be good to hang back and pick one of these up on a steep sale. But maybe you're hearing me talk about these games, and you're someone who's played them, and you're saying, hey, well maybe you could have done this, or you should have tried this instead. Or maybe you just have some general gameplay tips that would help me progress further. Or maybe everything I read online was wrong, and I'm just not playing the game correctly. But if you have any tips, I'd appreciate it if you leave it down in the comments. I'd love to try the game again at some point, and I hope that any advice would help me along the way. Of course, if you have any thoughts about the Etrian Odyssey HD collection, whether it's the pricing or the games and you really like them or don't like them, you could leave a comment down below as well. As always, you could also leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and subscribe to the channel for more things JRPG related. And thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.